What up, people? It's Nick Ops here, and today we're going to be going over this article that I just saw that everyone's talking about. And it's basically talking about how the main creator, everything of Tekken, the main game director, that's a better way to put it, is talking about how he feels the newer generation of players are basically, to sum it up, he thinks the new generation of fighting game players are crybabies. Like, I'm going to just put it bluntly. You can tell he's trying to mince words and everything, but as I'm going over the article, you'll understand more what I'm talking about. And I'm going to give my take on everything and having like a little online reader and then giving my take on each section. But on the first part where he's saying, I'm going to give my take on this part right now. Tekken producer says younger players prefer team-based games to one-on-one fighting games because they can shift the blame when they lose. Now, about this part right here. Okay, let me make something very clear on how I feel about this part. This part is absolutely 100% correct if he didn't have this part right here. Younger players. It has nothing to that has nothing to do with younger players. Like, first of all, it's everyone. That's why fighting games will never be as big as other genres. And I've been saying that for the longest. And I think it's great that I finally see someone else feels the same way because people don't really talk about this. And I do feel like the reason fighting games aren't as big is because they are one on one and people can't blame other people when they lose. And they can't get carried by their friends or teammates. It's just a whole lot of nuance. And I always have said to my friends, I do feel like fighting games would be bigger if they added a team element to it because that would get the masses into fighting games. Now, I don't agree with this younger player statement at all. It's everybody, the older players, the mid players, the younger players, everybody is at fault on why fighting games won't be as big because they cannot accept that they're the reason they're losing and they don't want to overcome themselves and get good. That's why fighting games aren't popular. It's simple as that. They're really popular when they first come out. Like, fighting games are like a forest fire, like not a forest fire, but they're like a huge fire that comes out like they're hot, that everyone's playing it, and then it fizzles down really fast. So that's how I feel about the main statement. But now we're gonna get into the meat and potatoes of everything that was said, and I'm gonna be giving my take on each section. So let's start off with this part right here.
Tekken series producer Hiro Harada recently appeared on the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences Game Maker's Notebook podcast. When the conversation shifted towards the Tekken series, its popularity and how the fighting game genre can evolve for younger players in the future. Harada believes that for the genre to continue to evolve it will have to integrate more team-based components, as it's his contention that younger players prefer team-based games to one-on-one fighting games because they can shift the blame when they lose. It seems to me that the way fighting games are played has evolved over time, with the generations, Harada told PlayStation's Shu Yoshida. Harada went on to explain the innate competitive nature of his generation towards gaming and life in general compared to today's youth. In Japan, and probably in most of the world, my generation is a big one. It makes up a good chunk of the population. That made our society a competitive one.
Okay, so this first part basically it addresses what I mentioned already, how I feel, how he feels on the newer generation of players. So there's not really much to break down here. So we're gonna go down to this section right here.
If you applied to a school or for a job, there was always a lot of competition. Because of this, people in my generation prefer definitive outcomes, a clear winner and loser. This applies to folks in and around there. 50s. But most young people nowadays are the opposite. They're rarely eager to engage in one-on-one showdowns. Plus, because fighting games pit you by yourself, against a single opponent, you have to accept all the responsibility if you lose. You can't blame anyone else. In team-based shooters, when players win, they can say that they won because of their own contributions, but when they lose, it's because they got matched with a lousy team.
Okay, so this is the part where I agree with these two right here. Well, not the first one. I half agree with this one. I do not agree with this one, but I do agree with this part right here. So where he's talking about in team-based shooters, when players win, they can say that they won because of their own contributions, but when they lose, it's because they got matched with a lousy team. That is not like, uh, you can say that, but let's make something really clear. And it's something that I have noticed in a lot of competitive games that I've played that aren't fighting games. There's this thing called MMR. And MMR is, in some games, it's literally designed to make you lose. Like, the perfect example is a game that I used to play a lot that I adore that game, but I can't play the game because I'm too good at it. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but let me break it down. Smite, I love that game. I go ham in that game. I have so much fun when I play that game. But because my win rate is so high in that game, the game actually tries to force me to lose. Like, literally force me to lose. And they came out on one of their little developer streams and admitted it. They literally said, yes, if your win rate is above a 50%, we are actively going to try to make you lose. But at least they admitted it. There are a lot of games that do this now. And I remember, I don't really play COD that much nowadays, but I know people are saying COD is doing the same thing too. So that is true. Games actively, if you are a very, very above average player, they try to make you lose. It's an MMR system. It's chasing that high. They try to make you lose, so you're chasing that win. You're chasing that win. They actively try to do it, and game developers are admitting it now. I know that they do that in Overwatch as well, even though I don't play that as much, and I just know it's a common thing. So I want to say, like, I half agree with this kind of, because yes, it is, sometimes it'll be the player's fault and they won't blame themselves, but a lot of times it will actually be because of your team if you are a very, very, very good player. But that is not most people. So you can only feel that pain if you are a very, 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 very good player. Because that is absolutely true. Games actively try to make you lose. And I've been saying this for the longest. Like, I don't know when they started this trend or whatever, but it's so annoying. And the only way to bypass it is if you have a consistent group of people that you can play with all the time. But a lot of people do not have that. So let's go back into this part right here. Let's continue.
Believes that some of these multiplayer elements, which make team-based games such as League of Legends, Dota, Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto V so popular, have to be integrated into the fighting game genre for it to further grow and appeal to the younger generation of gamers. I'm not saying we should suddenly turn a fighting game into a puzzle game or a real-time strategy game, Harada continued. I still think there's demand for games like this sort of hand-to-hand fighting, but maybe we could include other ways of competing outside of the main game. For example, maybe they don't always have to fight one-on-one. They could opt for team battles, such as 3-on-3 matches.
And that would be perfect. I am telling y'all, the first fighting game that makes playing with your team competitive and still good is going to be the fighting game that takes the world by storm. I am telling y'all this, mark my words in this video, there has been no fighting game that has really honed in on being a team element fighting game. And honestly, I don't know how they could do it to where it could be good as a one-on-one fighting game but still have the team elements. Like, I don't understand how they could do it. I feel like if your health bar goes down, the other person gets tagged in isn't enough. But he is absolutely right here. He is absolutely right on that is what's stopping fighting games from becoming huge. What I don't understand is how he knew this whole time and he still made Tekken 8 how it is. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but if he has this philosophy, I wonder what he's going to apply this to. Is he going to try a new IP as a new fighting game? But it's very dangerous for him to say this, because if the other fighting game companies catch on to this, then his whole idea can get stolen by somebody else. Because I haven't heard any other fighting game really talk about this, and this is an amazing thing for the future of fighting games. It really would be if they did this. And he is on to something right here. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I have agreeing with him on the article. I just don't agree with the whole, oh, it's just the younger players. That has nothing to do with the younger players. It's everyone. But I'm going to get into that in a bit, because we're almost done with the article.
I think we may want to incorporate this into the online mode's official rankings. Maybe team matches could have positions within a team, something like the order of teammates in judo matches. Right now, in Tekken's online mode, each player fights alone, battle after battle, just trying to climb the rankings. Maybe with more varied modes based on things like teams or regions, it could add more meta gaming as well. Do you agree with the Tekken series producer that younger players prefer team-based games to one-on-one fighting games because they can shift the blame when they lose? Which generation of gaming are you from? Let us know in the comment.
Okay, so for a little more context, Harada is 53. So I'm just going to point that out there because now this video is going to be me talking about what I feel about this last statement right here. Do you agree that the Tekken series producer that younger players prefer team-based games to one-on-one fighting games because they can shift the blame when they lose? Which generation of fighting games are you from? Let us know in the comments. So, like I've been saying with this whole video, I agree with most of what he's saying. So if I could make that clear now. But blaming it on generations is just ignorant. Let's make something clear, Harada. Your generation did not have all the connections and all of the, notoriety that is here today. What a lot of the older generation cannot accept is fighting games are much, 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 much more competitive than they were in the past. I don't know why they can't accept this. The older generation can't accept this, but it just is what it is. As things progress, as things grow in anything, whether it be shooters, fighting games, hip hop, it doesn't matter. There will always be new people, new players and everything that come along and up the competition. When you're starting something and not a lot of people know about it, the competition is not going to be as fierce as it progresses. Now, there are aspects and elements that can change that in terms of game difficulty and all of that. But the fact of the matter is, the longer something goes on, the more likelihood of competition it's going to have. And a lot of the older players of past generations cannot accept they cannot accept that the fighting games have evolved player wise. If you put the player base now against the player base in the past with all the developments and everything, now I will be fair. We were not fighting on the same playing field. Like back in his day, you couldn't just go to Twitter and talk to a top 10 player and be like, "Hey, will you fight me?" You couldn't do that in that time. So of course the competition is more fierce now because everyone is more accessible. You can message the top 5 players and see, can you fight one of them? You can, train with a friend that you wouldn't have been able to train with back in the day unless you went to the arcade. So for him to make that statement that it's just the younger players is very, very ignorant. It just flat out is. It has nothing to do with the other younger players. That's just how fighting games are in general. Back to this original statement right here. So people prefer team-based games to fighting games. I do think he's right about that, but it's nothing to do with the younger players. And it's at the end of the day, it's more accessible. It's easier for, Jimmy, who work a 9 to 5 and got 2 kids or 3 kids, to hop on and play some games with his boy Rick and Bobby so he can, wind down after work, then hopping on a 1v1 game and sweating his heart out. Like, that's why a lot of these players you see coming up are younger players who people try to claim that are prodigies, but I don't think that at all. Like, a lot of people, that's a whole nother video. People be so quick to say younger players are just prodigies and everything, but honestly, they have a lot more time to play than everybody else. A unnatural time. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I just think that is what it is. I can get into that on a whole nother video, but the fact of the matter I'm trying to make is I want to say I 70 to 80% agree with him on this article, but I don't agree that it's just the younger players. That makes no sense because you can't if you want to compare that metric, the players of this generation, you put them all in your generation, are going to blow your generation out of the water because of the accessibility to fight multiple different players, this online feature where you can fight everybody, the generalization of what newer players could do back to old players. It's not fair. So I will say it's not fair the way we're able to play now than the way that you were able to play back then. But if we're comparing fighting game players to now and back then, it's not comparable. The new generation is going to blow them out of the water. So that's why I think that he's just simply wrong. Like sometimes, and I know he's got the typical, old head mentality. My way was the better way, but that's just not always the case. And if it was the case in this situation, I would say that, but I don't think it is at the end of the day. So let me know what you think in the comments below about this whole thing. Like, I do think that, you know, they're making fighting games easier overall. And he is, guilty of that too. He literally developed a game that is a easier fighting game of the past generation. So for him to come out and say this, I don't think it was counterintuitive, but he should be more worried about fixing his game right now than the only articles that should be coming out, because Tekken in its current state is actually not even really playable right now with all the glitches that came in with the latest patch. So if you all enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out, all my socials and everything and my link tree in the description. And I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And Nick Ops out.